Hi there, I'm Antony RevolutionaryJam, but you can call me Ant, Tony, Tone, Tons, Ants, Antoine, or any derivative thereof. It's May of 2008, and today I want to talk about corporatism and reforming the welfare state. After my last video on distribution of wealth, quite a few of my friends on here commented saying they didn't agree with the underlying principles. You see, in the past, I've been lucky enough to have people from both the left and right wings of the political spectrum enjoy my videos, and so we're bound to disagree sometimes. But that's good because it's an opportunity to share opinions, ideas, information, and learn from one another. I consider myself to be a free thinker, and I do come from a leftist perspective on a number of issues, but I also come from a right-of-centre perspective on other ones. A lot of people who subscribe to and comment on my videos are Ron Paul supporters that advocate free market economics, and that's fine. You know, I'm also a big Ron Paul fan. I just happen not to agree with him on all the issues, and I feel the same about other politicians I like Dennis Kucinich, Mike Gravel, Ralph Nader, and over here George Galloway. In fact, I don't agree with anyone 100%, and I think if I did, I wouldn't really be thinking for myself. Right. Free market economists see the welfare state as a sort of Robin Hood who steals from the productive to give to the unproductive. But I'd like you to consider that the current system of corporatism, that is collusion of government and capitalism for special interests, does more to rob from the poor and the middle class to give to the extremely wealthy than to rob from those with means to give to those without means. For example, recently the British Chancellor Alistair Darling gave £50 billion of taxpayers' money away to banks that were ailing because of policies of greed. When they were making huge profits, they were allowed to keep every penny of it, but as soon as their businesses start failing, the taxpayer has to bail them out. That's on top of the £45 billion which he gave to Northern Rock last month. Also, at the same time, they're scrapping the 10% income tax band, so the least well-off earners who are working for their money have to pay more. When Gordon Brown was Chancellor, he sold our gold reserves for around a fifth of their current value. Now, this is theft of the highest order, and it's not the Robin Hood sort of theft that Conservatives complain about. Now, in the true sense of these ideologies, corporatism should be abhorrent to both the left and the right wing. And you know, I'm sure the Ron Paul supporters will agree with me on this, because he talks about the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical-industrial complex, and the Federal Reserve, which are all examples of corporatism. But because both here in the UK and in the USA, it seems that only two parties can get into power, and both engage in corporatism, we don't really seem to have that much choice. But this is why it's so important that the left and the right come together in these issues, because we have to stop them. Just like the anti-war left wing and the anti-war right wing. Sometimes we need to put aside our differences and synergize. Now, on some of the criticisms that I got on my last video on distribution of wealth, let me say, I am all for people being allowed to keep the fruit of their labours, but labours is the key term here. It always amazes me how some Conservatives consider people on benefits to be parasites, but at the same time they think it's perfectly reasonable for people to make millions by rent, usury, property speculation, or share dividends, which are all based on the fruits of other people's labours. It's my opinion that the current welfare system, like so many of the systems in our society, such as our means of food production, our means of energy production, fuel production, and government by the few over the many, has been created deliberately to encourage dependency, because the more dependent people are, the easier they are to control. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, shall we? I mean, it doesn't have to be like this. There are ways of providing everyone's basic needs that don't create a disincentive to work. And that largely does lie in moving from centralised production to community production. But that's an issue for a different video. Right now I want to talk about how we could reform the welfare system to remove that disincentive to work. In some ways I sympathise with the right wing in this issue, because the welfare state has become a black hole for public spending and it justifies endless taxes, but a better system exists. It's called a basic income, and most benefits, pensions, tax allowances and social security payments could be replaced by this. The idea is that every man, woman and child through their parent or guardian to replace child benefit is entitled to a certain amount of money. Not a huge sum of money, but enough to ensure that they don't go hungry. People with adequate incomes would receive their basic income as a tax deduction, and people in between would receive a mixture of both. This would remove the argument that people not in work are parasites, because everyone would be receiving the same treatment. While I admit this system would still yield problems and abusers, those problems already exist under the present system, and this would go a long way to alleviate some of the current problems that already exist. For example, the main one is commonly known as the poverty trap, where on one side you have unemployed people who want to work and jobs that need doing, but no unemployed people doing those jobs because the pay for the work is less than what they can receive in benefits. Now, when you have a family to feed, you ain't going to take up a job that pays you less than your benefits, let's face it. Under a basic income scheme, the money you get from working would be added to what you receive in benefits. Far from being a disincentive to work, this would mean there was always a use to taking up more hours. The poverty trap most affects people on low incomes. Sometimes if their earnings go up, their income becomes less. I mean, talk about depressing. That wouldn't happen under a basic income scheme, because the harder you work, the higher your income. And imagine what this would do to ease the stress and suffering in our society if people knew that even if they lost their jobs, they wouldn't go hungry. Advocates of free markets say they encourage entrepreneurialism, but so would a basic income, because self-employed people would get it too. So this would encourage more people to take the risk. It would give them security and an opportunity for success. It would also help people take time out to retrain, and it would recognise the value of all the voluntary work which at the moment goes unpaid for. The current system is too flawed with contradictions to provide employment for everyone. For example, in the strive to compete on the international market for jobs, companies turn to mechanisation for efficiency, so more jobs go, and then other countries follow, and on and on. The extremes of capitalism alienate labour, keeping their wages and rights down and making their jobs untenable, yet at the same time it demands that everyone seek full-time employment. And the socialist ideal is also too obsessed with full-time jobs for everyone, instead of looking at the quality of labour, the kind of jobs people are forced to do. And they also don't distinguish between jobs and work, which is a much wider term which could encompass care in the community and looking after a household. I mean, try telling any housewife, or indeed house husband in this modern world we live in, that they don't work. Doesn't she or he deserve to have a basic income which is independent of their partners? I have a friend who's a single mum and another one who's disabled. Each of them would love to work more than 16 hours a week to attain a higher standard of living. They're unable to because they'll lose their benefits. Wouldn't it be better to have a system which phased them out rather than cutting them off all of a sudden? I truly believe that the idea of a welfare state where we know that no one's going to starve or sleep in a box is one of the most evolved and enlightened achievements of humanity. And yes, the current one is a disgrace, but it doesn't have to be like this. In the meantime, when it was proposed that the government provide free nutritious school lunches, they said they didn't have enough money. But it seems like for illegal wars and nuclear weapons, it's write a blank cheque. How would you rather they spent the money? I'm aware I look like Jesus. Thanks very much for listening.